So, you want to work in a zoo? Well, you're in the right place. We're going to be talking to zookeepers, researchers, conservationists and many more people about their careers. We will discuss how they got into doing what they do now, and of course we'll be asking them for their advice to those that aspire to work with animals or for animals and the natural world.
Right. We have been itching to talk to our guest today for some time. I've worked in a number of zoos and similar organisations, and today's guest has been the one person who has most directly challenged me. How is your plan going to help us achieve our mission, Matt? And why is your name badge on upside down? So I'm going to hand back to Ollie for our usual starting point.
Okie dokie.
So much for a serious organisation.
Serious start to the day. So obviously we are joined by yourself, Dennis. So Dennis, who are you and what do you do here at Well Planet Trust?
Okay, so I'm Dennis Flynn, helpfully, and I'm the Chief Executive. And what that means is that, I think I'm kind of in charge. But
I think
the daily experience indicates that it's a whole team effort.
We think you're in charge.
I think, can we generally agree that I'd be okay?
100%, that's fine. Okay, so that brings me on to, I suppose, thinking about careers and careers podcasts. So what is the weirdest job you've ever done or ever had?
So I'm not allowed to say this one, am I? I'm not allowed to say that. I mean, this at times is the most surreal job
I can imagine.
Can I answer that a slightly different way?
Yeah.
Things that I've done which have surprised me, which I wasn't expecting to do.
Okay.
Seaweed sweeping.
Okay.
Lego brick counting. And organising a private opera performance.
Okie dokie.
Okay, which is the weirdest, though? Which one did you think,
Wow.
why am I doing this?
I think each of them are a bit strange, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the most mind-numbing, I think we can probably agree, would be Lego brick counting.
Okay.
And that was when I was in the army.
Right. I'm not seeing a link between the army and Lego brick counting.
Well, maybe I can illustrate the point. Back in the day, the army used to run schools for children, particularly overseas, and they had to do stock taking, and clearly the people in the school weren't capable of counting their own Lego bricks, so young officers were drafted in to do the stock taking of the schools, and so I spent a whole day sitting on a chair for a 5-year-old counting Lego bricks by colour and size.
Wow.
Did you stand on any in bare feet?
No.
Yeah, it's just the worst possible pain imaginable to parents.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I can imagine. Yeah. So I think that's the seaweed sweeping was great actually, because that was part of my summer jobs down here, because I grew up down here.
Yeah. So fresh air in Torquay, lovely summer day, sweeping up some seaweed. I can see that would have a charm.
But that was only one day a week.
Right. Okay.
The other days were lifeguard off Beacon Cove and Torremy Sands,
Nice.
and deck chair attendant, which was good fun.
Yeah.
And then the opera performance was after I left the army. I ended up spending a year doing head of security for one of these Italian fashion families, and they used to organise a party in their Tuscan estate once a year, and not just any party. This guy, being a billionaire, hired an orchestra full opera cast.
That's impressive.
Yeah, not how the other half live, how the other 1% live.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Is that weird or is it cool? I think that might be coolest job.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
But it's still weird.
Yeah,
Like, you don't expect that would happen.
Yeah.
It's seaweed sweeping. I'd rather be organising opera stars than seaweed sweeping, but
True.
and that's from a marine biologist.
Actually, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm not sure you.
Oh, okay. More demanding. Right. I know that you're now our chief executive, but you arrived at the zoo during the time I worked here. So you've been working here for 18 months or so.
Yeah.
Can you give us just an outline of the jobs that you've done before? When we're talking about this being a careers podcast, then we're tending to think about people changing their careers or leaving school and trying to work out what they want to do. So what have you done?
Okay, so So my career has been a series. I mean, this is probably not what you want to hear if you're sort of, how do you plan careers?
Yeah.
But my career has been a series of bonkers accidents, to be honest.
Okay.
So I went to school here and then joined the army.
Right, okay. Like straight out of school?
Straight out of school,
Okay.
yeah. Went to Sandhurst officer training.
Okay.
And spent 30 years in the army.
Okay. Why did you join?
Sorry?
Like, why? Why did you join? Was it just...
Oh,
you
God.
knew? You wanted to?
Matt. Okay, so the serious answer is because my father had been in the army
Okay.
and he sadly died before I joined up, but I
Yeah.
wanted to follow in his footsteps. The real practical answer is that I was sitting in the library at Torquay Grammar School one
Yeah.
afternoon. I'd finished my homework. It was raining. I couldn't think of anything else to do, and there were a bunch of forms to fill in.
Right, okay.
So,
Yeah.
and I filled in for a whole range of things,
Yeah.
including being a pilot, actually.
Okay.
And the army was the first one to reply. And then I was kind of just on this escalator. So this is, bonkers accident number one. And then I did that, and then and I was moderately successful. And then I left that and I set up my own consulting firm after a short period looking after this Italian fashion family.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a start-up.
Okay.
Started up my own business and ran that for a few years and then sold it. And then I took myself off into academia to do a master's,
Right, okay. In what?
applied psychology.
Right, okay. So is it just an interest that had been brewing while you'd been in the army, or?
Yeah, so one of the things which intrigued me was why it was that under pressure some people were resilient and other people
Yeah.
didn't seem to be able to cope.
Okay.
And the kind of the thinking at the time was that, well, you never really know until you see people under
Yeah.
pressure whether they can do it or not. And I just thought that was a bit of lazy thinking. So I
Yeah.
took myself off to do a master's and see if I could find out the answer.
Yeah, okay. Did you find
No.
out the answer?
No.
Okay, still waiting. Right, okay.
I added to the body of knowledge.
Yeah,
Let's put it
okay.
that way.
That'd be interesting to know. But going backwards, just with the army, I think that a lot of people will feel for how you felt at the time. Like my son at the moment is 15. He's looking at choosing what he wants to do for a career, and everybody keeps on saying, "What are you going to do?" And you can see him saying, "I don't know what I want to do."
Yeah.
But sometimes your life goes off with just a choice of a form that you fill in, and that's the tangent you end up going in, right?
Yeah, and I think if I look back, I think the you just need to embrace things and keep an open mind.
Yeah.
And I could have had a go at being in the army, and after a year or so, it could have crashed and burned, and I would have said, okay, well, that obviously didn't work out.
Yeah.
Um,
You have to commit to it, though, right? You're going wholeheartedly. I can't imagine that you can. You don't go into the army thinking, right, I will just do this for, just twiddle along and I'll do my hobbies as
it's
well.
Not quite how it works.
Just go for it. And,
Yeah.
Right, which is, when we've talked to some of the keepers there and the other staff here, they're very passionate about what they do, right? They find something that they're good at, or they find something that they really love and they go for it.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, there's that sweet spot, isn't there, between what you're passionate about, what you're good at, and what you might get paid for. That kind of Venn diagram. Ideally, it's somewhere in the middle. And I think if you can find that, if you're not passionate about something, then it's a bit of a struggle.
yeah.
And so my advice on that would be, if you don't think you're going to be passionate and able to commit to something,
Yeah.
then think again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Might find something that's going to call you, right? So,
Yeah, it's going to, but also, I mean, sometimes you don't have choices. Sometimes you just got to say, okay, for the next period, I've just got to get my head down. This is what I've got to do.
Yeah.
But I'm actually aiming to be or to do something else in the future.
Yeah.
Did the psychology interest come during your time in the army, or was it more that?
No, it came from my consulting firm.
Yeah,
because my consulting firm, this was a bit Walter Mitty-ish, but it dealt with kind of corporate crisis management.
Okay. So preparing for disasters and
Yeah, but actually sometimes a bit more technical than that, like sort of preparing investment banks for a meltdown in the euro.
Right,
That-
okay.
Oh, wow.
That kind of thing. And, I watched lots of senior executives right at the top of their profession in a number of different sectors.
yeah,
And some were really good, and of course, we would run them through crisis simulation exercises.
Yeah.
And the thing was, they knew it was an exercise. And
Yeah.
yet some would freeze, even though they knew it was in their diary for 3 hours, and afterwards real life will kick in.
Yeah.
Some would actually absolutely freeze. And I saw that for a few years, and some were brilliant.
Yeah.
Some were absolutely fantastic, absolutely on it. And that's what triggered my interest in how could that be? Because these people were really clever.
Yeah.
Had got to the top of the tree in their sectors and in their professions, and yet there was something in their makeup which made them really uncomfortable with dealing with ambiguity.
Okay.
Right.
And that was one of the findings. That,
Right. Okay. So bright, experienced, capable people who just froze for.
Yeah.
Froze up.
Yeah.
Okay. It's interesting. We're going to go off on a major tangent here for a careers podcast. Right, getting back. So you went from school to military to consulting, and now you're chief executive of Wild Planet Trusts, which runs Paynton Zoo and Newquay Zoo. Getting back to your job with us now.
Yeah.
Like, what's a typical day for you?
There is no typical day.
Okay.
And that's one of the most brilliant things about this job.
Yeah.
There is no typical day. But if I were to try and invent a typical day, which, it involves a number of things, some of which, a lot of it's actually to do with representing the zoo with other people, to other people, and not just here, but obviously Newquay and the wider trust as well, to lots of different people. So there are quite a lot of external meetings. With MPs, with councillors, and so on about where we are, and then there are also quite a lot of meetings about. And so most of my day sadly is filled up with meetings and writing stuff, and not getting out as much as I'd like to. And then there's a bunch of stuff around trying to shape the future.
Right. Okay.
So a typical day would be arrive, get a caffeine hit, see what's coming overnight, see if there's any bit of firefighting that needs doing, and then run through a diary of things to do, mainly planning, shaping, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Middle of the day, get another caffeine hit, and go again.
Yeah.
Try and find some time to walk around. And then back to the office and try and stay focused on the future.
Yeah, I think it's strange because a lot of people would think if we said to you, "What does a CEO do?" then you think of them running the company, right? And I know we're a charity, but if you think of it as running the business, then a lot of people would assume that you're making the decisions about the company. But in some ways, what you're describing is it's actually like representing us to other, or dealing with the company outside rather than internal issues. You're dealing with.
Yeah, so I think my job is about shaping.
Yeah.
And before I came here, I took advice about what should be my priorities.
Yeah.
And how should I go about doing it?
Yeah.
Because I'd never run zoos before.
Yeah.
And I got some really good advice, which was identify the 2 or 3 things that only you can do and focus on those. And I think that the things which a chief executive can do are shape culture, provide a vision for the future, and represent the organisation.
Okay.
So there's a brilliant team of people who work with me, and they actually run the place on a day-to-day basis in the context of what we've discussed about where we're going in the future.
Yeah. Okay. So. I think that's an interesting sort of twist on what you'd expect. Like a lot of school kids or younger people, or people not in business, maybe think of a CEO as the big people they see on TV who are always swanning in and telling people to do stuff.
No, it doesn't. Well, here it doesn't work.
Right, I know we dragged you away from your office. It's Friday morning, and we dragged you away. But what have you left on your computer? What have you got to go back to? What you can tell us about?
Stuff. It's about those things that I've just been talking about.
Yeah.
It's my inbox. My inbox is varied on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So what's in my inbox at the moment is a lot of stuff about avian influenza.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We've just been had a case of avian influenza in the
Yeah.
zoo a few weeks ago. We've had to deal with that. We're dealing with the resolution of it. So.
Yeah. And that actually is a good example of the kind of thing which you might not expect a CEO to be doing.
Yeah.
Because that's about talking to government departments. It's about talking to our local MPs. It's about dealing with agencies and so on to try and see what lessons we can learn from what happened here, and see if the lessons we learned here were any good, would be any use to other zoos if it happened.
Yeah. There's a good network of zoos. I'm always amazed at how much zoos help each other, and aquaria as well. Wild animal parks help each other to, considering that sometimes we be in competition as businesses. I think it's really helpful having lots of zoos helping each other to weather storms like this. So.
I think that's a really interesting. You used the word competition there, and someone said to me, shortly after I got here, did I see X zoo as a competitor? And I said, no, I don't. Absolutely not. If someone comes here and has a great experience, and let's say they're on holiday here, and they then go back to their own town where there's a zoo, they're more likely to go to that place. So it's unlike most other sectors, I think, in that we're not competitors. We're actually complementary in many respects to each other, and we work together, of course, really closely.
Yeah, and common cause as well with conservation.
Exactly.
Okay, going for a light-hearted one. Okay, which is which animal or exhibit do you spend most time watching here at the zoo? It can be here or at Newquay Zoo.
I think is this a kind of the same question as what's my favourite animal? It sounds like it's slightly different, isn't it?
It is a bit. Which I was going to say, what's your favourite animal? But that seems too easy. We can answer that if you want. But it's just like sometimes, from a personal point of view, like the animal I spend the most time watching here is probably the crocodiles.
Okay.
Which they don't do anything, so I don't know why, but I just like them. And
so I would say the Tarkin.
Right. Okay. The Tarkin, which is
they do have a very nice exhibit.
Goats on steroids, massive, muscly, heavy-duty goats that live in the mountains in.
Is that a technical description of
No.
I think you just did the Tarkin a disservice.
They always look very calm.
Yes,
They do.
Right. Yeah. In terms of resilience, I think they might be level-headed and.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe there's a master's dissertation in that.
Okay.
And kind of the follow-up. Why would I do? I like because they're in the quarry.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's a really peaceful, Zen-like zone.
Yeah.
And you go up there, and to your point, they are really calm, and they kind of mooch around. And the thing I enjoy about going up to see them is that, life can be quite busy.
Yeah.
And just having somewhere where you can go and take a deep breath.
Yeah.
And just watch these kind of. Is lugubrious a word?
It is, but
it is.
I think they.
Are they lugubrious?
I was just thinking more about when you were saying about the zoo being. Like, sometimes it does offer a chance for reflection, and maybe that's what I get in Croc Swamps as well. It's just that moment of stillness, which is we're a busy visitor attraction, but we do still offer places where you can reflect. So.
Yeah, and I think that's. Life is busy for pretty much everybody, and being able to just immerse yourself in nature for a little while, even if it's only 10 minutes or
small doses. Yeah. Okay. The nature equivalent of a power nap.
This podcast is brought to you by Wild Planet Trust, a conservation charity based in the southwest of the UK with zoos in Paignton and Newquay, local and national nature reserves, and field projects in the UK, Tanzania, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, Vietnam, and Sulawesi. You can find out more on our website www.wildplanettrust.org.uk.
Right, so going off on that, there we go. Management geeks may be familiar with, that people try and learn lessons from animals. So a while back, I came across this guy, Ian Thomas, who's an ex-safari guide, who did a presentation called Power of the Pride, which was about lessons that you can learn for management from Pride of Lions. And his point was about them being very focused and trusting each other and the importance of teamwork. But have you seen any similar lessons that you've noticed yourself?
Gosh, what a great question. I thought you were going to reference the chimp paradox as a...
No, you can draw on the chimp paradox if you want. I've only just come across that myself.
So oh, God, no.
Huh?
So I haven't read the book.
Yeah.
Oh, dear, oh, dear.
The chimp paradox? No, it's on my wish list.
No, I mean, the other one.
Oh, okay, Power of the Pride.
To be fair, I haven't read them all.
No.
But either of them fully all the way through. So development, is this about how you go about thinking about what are the management bits you need to pull out?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's dangerous. The Victorians were famous for looking at animals and trying to see them as extolling virtues. So they would look at, the humble dunnock, which is a bird that we find in our gardens, and they would say about it being very faithful, and in fact they're not at all. And you can learn lessons from animals, or maybe you see illustrations of behaviour in animals that you think.
I think you're right. I think we project a lot of our own emotions and our own responses onto animals. We say, my dog's looking at me that way, therefore my dog is joyful at the moment. Well, dogs don't do higher emotions. Their emotional development stops. The equivalent, I think, of a 2.5 or a 3-year-old child. Okay. So they don't do the really complex cognitive processing. But if my dog's looking at me, when I'm sitting at the table eating my meal, I'm thinking, he's just waiting for some scraps from the table.
I was going to say ring-tailed lemurs. You see, I look at and see that's the society I want to join. That's the management model of they seem to enjoy each other's company, sit around and think deep thoughts a lot. So, Right, okay, going off on a different tangent, which is very formal, which is qualifications. You've mentioned already you study for a master's degree. So what qualifications do you have, and do they help you to do your job?
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh, should I? What qualifications have you got? It's almost like I'm starting out again, isn't it? What qualifications? Thank God I've got this job, because
we're going to check that you're appropriate for us now.
I'll show you most. So, it's one of these things where I think the more you move through life, qualifications become less important than experience and a capacity to adapt. Yeah. So when I left school, I left school and went straight to the army. Yeah. I managed to scramble through some A levels. Yeah. Which was a surprise to everybody, including myself. And then I went straight into the army. So I didn't go to university. And then I was in the army, and in the army you do various courses and things, and so eventually you get qualified. And one of the things which I did, which did help me later on, was I went to something called the Staff College, which is a kind of like a senior management school. Right. Okay. And you don't actually get a certificate at the end of it. No. But funnily enough, the army sent me to the Italian equivalent, which is how I ended up working in Tuscany. And it was all in Italian. This whole thing was in Italian. And
the management training was in Italian.
Management training was in Italian, and I was selected for this thing, and I said to the selectors, "I don't speak Italian." And this shows you how far we've come in the last few years. The chap seriously said to me, "Well, you speak French, and it's close enough."
Right.
No, it's not.
No, absolutely.
Oh dear.
So
I'm trying to imagine sitting in a technical management lecture and not be able to speak the language. Yeah. But there we go.
I mean, you learn fast.
Okay.
You learn fast. Yeah. You also learn not to take yourself too seriously as well.
I think that ties in with that a lot of school leavers and sort of college leavers now are talking about apprenticeships or different ways of learning. So it's interesting to learn to hear that you'd learn on the job with the army.
Yeah.
What qualification would you do now?
Well, one of the things I've learned is sometimes you have to answer the question you'd like to get, not the one you've just been asked.
Right. Okay.
So that I'm going to answer the question I would like you to ask me, not the one you just. And I think what I set out was, I said I didn't go to university.
Yeah.
I regretted that as I went through my kind of career life. I regretted not going to university. So that's one of the motivations for having done the masters later on. I think if I were thinking about doing something now, I would choose, and I've no idea what this might be. It might be something like comparative linguistics,
Right, okay.
Something which really fascinates me.
Yeah.
And do it because of the love of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, life happens, and in just doing something that you love,
Yeah.
opportunities may arrive
Yeah.
from just doing that.
Yeah.
You never know. So I think...
I shouldn't have asked you that question because I've been telling my son to do a course where there's a job at the end of it. And no, he should. But a lot of other people have been saying, like, find your passion, like follow, find something that interests you and just go for it.
I mean, I think that there's always a sweet spot, isn't
Yeah.
there? There's always a sweet spot, and you need to balance out real life.
Yeah.
But don't. I would suggest to people, you don't just do something because you think that you can plot a year or so or 2 years out about it's precisely what's going to happen to you, because you don't know.
Okay, so
And if you find you've been studying something for a couple of years, and when you're not really, you're just doing it because if you get to the end of the 2 years or 3 years or whatever it might be, and that thing which you're expecting to happen doesn't happen, you've just wasted a couple of years of your life.
Yeah.
And I think that's a bit of a shame.
Yeah.
So always do something that you believe in.
Yeah, and not end up specialising in something you don't want to end up in. Yeah, very true. What I suppose tying into that is when we talk about qualifications, then a lot of careers advisors would be talking about the skills that go with something. So with qualifications, you're going to gain skills in certain things. So what skills have you sort of got over time that you wouldn't necessarily associate with the role that you're doing now? So what's been important?
So I think... Maybe this podcast is demonstrating precisely the opposite of what I'm about to say, but communication.
Okay.
An ability to communicate your passion, be able to communicate complex ideas in a pretty simple way, an ability to be able to explain things to people. And someone once said to me that leadership is actually just communication, and more communication.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, if you're not communicating, you're not doing it, basically.
Yeah.
But that's quite interesting. When you're at school and your teachers are telling you need to do a presentation, and it can be terrifying if you're standing up and you're talking to a bunch of, especially your peers. It can be, and then you think, oh no, I'm never going to do this. I'm going to work on the phone. I'm going to work at a computer. I don't want to deal with people. But actually, you're dealing with people all the time, and you need to be able to, with confidence, to explain what you're thinking.
I think particularly when people say do a presentation or do a formal briefing or something like that, people get retreat into some kind of person that they're not really. They put on a different voice. And they speak in a way which they wouldn't speak to their mates down the pub. And I think when you're giving a presentation or when you're doing anything like that, most people in the audience want you to succeed. No one is looking for you to fail. And sometimes when you're giving a presentation, you kind of invent this sense of failure for yourself. So just have confidence, and if you believe in what you're saying, if you don't use exactly the word which everybody expects you to use, it doesn't matter that much. So just be confident. Communication, I think, is a skill. The other thing, which is slightly serious, is what I would describe as grit.
Right. Okay. So straightforward determination.
Just
Okay. Not giving up. Yeah. Okay. Do you think you learnt that from the military or from?
Well, I probably yes, but actually I learned about it properly when I did the masters.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
But actually, no, that's
okay. Well, with me, it was like mountaineering and adventure sports. Like you just can't. There's times when you cannot give up, or if you do, then it's not going to end well. So for me, that was my.
Actually, it's a really cool because once a year, when COVID permitting, I do something where I walk across Scotland, self-supporting, so about 300 kilometres over the Highlands and all that kind of stuff. And I was doing it last year, and it was day 2, and the weather was absolutely brutal. The west coast of Scotland, absolutely brutal. And I had to sit down and give myself a good talking to.
Yeah.
And one of the things I said to myself is, sitting here talking to yourself isn't going to make the distance any shorter.
Yeah.
Get up, get on with it.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of, okay,
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Motivation.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is funny when you're at school and people are saying you need to write a CV, and it's important that you show that you're a motivated individual. Is actually being able to say, right, to yourself, no, I need to get on with this.
Yeah.
It's exam time. I need to knuckle down.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah. Okay. What do you like best about your job?
That sounds as if it doesn't know, doesn't it?
It's working with us. Don't tell us.
No, this is going to sound really, really cheesy, okay? But it's absolutely heartfelt. It's working with the people here.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody, it's just the most fantastic team.
Yeah.
I've been really privileged over the years to work with bunches of highly motivated, fantastic people in the military and in consulting world and all that kind of thing. And it's when there's people are passionate about what they're doing.
Yeah.
You get that sense, so it's working with the people. And the other thing, which is it's kind of surprised me, because I didn't come to this with a background in conservation or anything, and I sort of surprised myself, if you will, about how I've generated this kind of interest in something which I wasn't expecting to do.
Okay.
And Matt, what's the best thing about your job?
The magic moment with me is if I'm talking to a bunch of people, and it doesn't have to be kids, it could be kids or adults, and you see them just being fascinated by the animals, and then you walk away and you go, yep, did it, good job.
Yeah.
And there's a little magic moment when you walk away and you're like, phew, good effort.
Yeah, and I think there's something here about the things which we consider to be routine and normal for us. Our magic moments.
Yeah.
For pretty much everybody else.
Yeah.
I remember I was talking to one of the keepers, who, by the way, are absolutely brilliant, and they were walking over to feed an animal. It doesn't matter which one it was. And I said, what are you doing? Oh, well, we're taking these nutrients over to the animals, and a wheelbarrow full of stuff. I said, oh, what's that? And they said, well, that pellet contains the nutrients which are required. And I was just transfixed.
Yeah.
And yet for us, that's a thing we do every day. It's just what we do. But if you don't know that, all of a sudden the routine is magical.
Yeah.
And that for me has been is a joy.
Yeah, they can be so flippant about the technical aspects of their jobs. When you're caring for a bunch of endangered species, and yet if they know that if they change something subtle about the enclosure or the food, it can actually make a positive improvement in that animal's life. Yeah, that's brilliant, isn't it? Okay, so having asked you the best bit about your job, what's the bit about your job you're happiest to leave to your teammates? IT, paperwork?
All of the above.
Right. Okay. What do you try and palm off on other people?
Yeah. So actually, I am probably a bit of a tech geek, so I don't mind, and I probably pretend to know more than I do.
Right. Okay. Like consumer, like sort of tech consumer.
Yeah. Has it got a blue flashing light? Is it silver? Yes. Okay, get it. That kind of. The thing which I am pretty hopeless at is organising my day.
Right. Okay.
And I am not. Yeah. I'm probably not good at doing it because I don't like doing it.
Yeah.
And so it means that unless people organise me, I leave it to the last minute.
Right.
Then I'm rushing around.
Yeah.
And it all goes very wrong.
Should do some psychology on that, I think. There we go. Okay, fair answer. So we've got some conservation projects that we support around the world.
Yeah.
So Wild Planet Trust supports conservation projects in Sulawesi, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, like some magic countries. But which one would you most like to visit? You get to go there to see it.
Yeah. Nigeria,
okay. Omo Forest.
forest elephants.
Okay.
So
it's an interesting reserve, right? We got, we helped to fund the education work there and some of the patrol work as well.
Patrols, and some of the guys have just been out there and they were telling me all about it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I suppose the obvious one would say would be any of them, but Zimbabwe with the rhinos and things like that. You know? But actually, when I was in the army, I spent a bit of time in the jungle.
Yeah.
And sort of forests and that that kind of thing is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. But brutal to be in. I do love a rainforest, but every time I go there, I remember how uncomfortable they really are at times. I think a good savanna is much more comfortable.
Yeah, and people, you get, you're in the kind of the tropics in inverted commas, and you're in the jungle, and you come out, as we used to go on patrol for sort of 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and you come out and people say, why aren't you tanned? Because the jungle canopy has blotted out the sunlight for 2 weeks. I'm as white as a sheet.
I'm white. I'm like rotting away gently, and I've got a leech attached to some part of my body I can't reach because I've, that's what when I was.
Can we move on right now?
Yes. Right. Okay. Okay. So I think Nigeria is a good choice as well. When I lived in Aberdeen for a while and for a long time, and of course Nigeria is associated with the oil industry. So when my friends talked about going to Nigeria, and they described about going to the oil installations, then it didn't hold much charm. But when you hear about Omo Forest, which is it's a home to forest elephants, other special wildlife. It's quite close to some big cities. But it still needs protecting. It's like it lasts.
And I think, part of the stuff we do here is you guys know, we've captured it in this idea of the START program. Safe havens, working together, taking action, doing research, and telling our story. And the point I think about the safe havens is that they don't necessarily just have to be here. It's about creating environments where we can help animals adapt, and all species and plants as well, adapt to changes in habitat and climate and those kinds of things. And if we can do that where they live, brilliant. But if we need to help them for a while somewhere else, like in a zoo, that's also part of the package.
So after you get back from your trip to Nigeria and you're in this dream world, getting back to the realities, what's technically tricky about your job? We've asked the keepers this question because, for some of them they're dealing with a species of frog where they have to try and maintain it in perfect conditions to try and encourage it to breed. So that's an example of when we said about technical trickiness. So what's tricky about your job?
I think, okay. One of the joys of holding the kind of job I've got is that I've got a lot of technical experts who provide advice. And if one tries to be technically expert, you're not doing the thing you should be doing, which is joining the dots, if you will. That's the role of the CEO and so I think what is the most challenging, so it's not necessarily technically difficult, is balancing. Balancing competing priorities. That's because everything, there's a good reason for almost everything. But if you do something brilliant over here, then that has a consequence over on the other side. And so that's probably the most challenging.
Technical.
And there is an element of technicality in that because you've got to understand what the implications are of things. And the other thing is to know what questions to ask.
Okay. So the technical trickiness is avoiding getting caught out, getting too far into the technicalities of stuff. So
actually, that's. I wish I'd thought of it that way, man.
Right. Exciting question. What's in the pipeline for our zoos in the future?
Oh gosh,
that you can talk about.
You can talk about.
I'm an open book. We're at a most brilliant place. It's a challenging time. We've come out of COVID. We've had avian flu. The economics are not brilliant. But we are in a place where we've got a vision for the future. We know where we want to go, and we've now, we've now defined ourselves as an organisation which helps halt species decline, and the strategy for us is to, and I will share this actually because the trustees agreed it only the other day, is to reimagine our zoos in a way which is really relevant for the different expectations of people.
Yeah.
And that will lead over the course of time to a 10, 15-year development programme on sites, and working with our colleagues across the overseas programmes that we work with, creating communities, joining the dots, joining communities, reimagining the visitor experience, developing new visitor experiences, digital experiences.
Yeah.
So it's an exciting time, founded on the fact that we now know who we are and what we want to be.
Yeah. Okay. So strong identity and then move forward.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
But in a sense, that's sort of one element of the excitement. The excitement, if you will, is looking 5-10 years down the track.
Yeah.
What will the shape of this place be like? I've got this vision of people coming in and it being much more immersive than it is now.
Yeah.
At the moment, zoos historically, because I came here when I was a kid. So growing up here, I was trying to find some photographs of me here to celebrate the centenary.
Yeah.
I'm not that old, but me with Herbert Whitley.
Oh wow.
No. But in a sense, zoos, if they're not careful, get wedded to this idea of people coming in and they look at things.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's now the exciting thing is that the work that we're doing to change that, to change it so that conservation is about everybody. Conservation is essentially a people thing.
Yeah. Okay.
And so how do we create a different environment where people get to interact in different ways with the animals rather than just seeing them or maybe having the odd experience or the odd keeper talk.
And going away genuinely moved by what they've seen and experienced, I guess.
Yeah. So the challenge I've given out is how do we make sure that every person who leaves this zoo, no matter how many times they come, has learnt something new every time they come here.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe change the way they think about animals, or Okay. That's interesting. Right.
Can I just say something else?
Yeah.
Okay. While I've got the floor. Well, this is about how we look at conservation as well. So, and this excites me because, the traditional way of zoos and conservation is, I'm going to exaggerate to make the point here, is visitors come, they spend money, and that money is then used to fund or do conservation somewhere else.
Yeah.
I think what's exciting about where we're going is that actually conservation is a kind of a whole thing.
Yeah.
And next year with free school visits, for example, and that's an opportunity to influence up to 60,000 conservationists of the future.
Yeah.
And that's exciting, and that is a different way of looking about how we apply our passion in conservation for different, not just doing stuff, but actually influencing behaviours as well.
Genuinely trying to, get kids to value wildlife early on, so they realise, if they've got to change their life, and they have to change their lifestyles, what they're doing it for.
Yes, exactly.
Show them what they're saving, basically.
And then nagging their parents as well.
Yes. Right, we're nearly finished, so got a couple of questions.
Okay.
If you weren't in conservation, what would you be doing? What would you be doing now?
If I wasn't in conservation now, having now done this, I'd be in conservation.
Okay.
If you were saying, what would I be doing if I hadn't started here?
Yeah, what would you, if so for some of our, perhaps I was thinking about a keeper who had, worked in construction or something like that, and he said, well, if I wasn't in conservation, I'd probably be on a building site or something. But if you weren't here,
I probably there are two possibilities. One possibility is that I would spend my time walking the hills of Scotland.
Okay, yeah.
Seeing if I could tick off all the Munros.
Yeah.
Fat chance there is of that. Munros are really. Do you know Munros are kind of the highest mountains in Scotland?
Okay.
Some of which are.
Massive.
One of which is impossible to climb, allegedly.
Okay.
But thousands of people have done it.
Yeah. Inaccessible pinnacle.
Yeah.
I've done that one.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'd be doing that, or alternatively, I'd be sitting in academia, doing some more research in a cosy office, with a cup of coffee.
Fair enough. Right, Ollie, last question.
Okay, so I think we've probably already touched on a few bits of advice, but kind of the final wrap-up summary is, what would your advice be to your 15-year-old self, knowing all that you know now?
Be bold, be confident, and commit.
Okay.
Cool.
Fair enough.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Dennis, for talking to us today. I hope that our listeners have got something useful from your time here, but thank you for talking.
It's been great. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening or watching our podcast. If you enjoyed it, please consider leaving us a review, or if you're watching, please hit the like button and leave us a comment about your favourite part of the episode. To get more content from Wild Planet Trust, please consider checking out our YouTube channel. You can subscribe there, and you can also subscribe to our newsletter on our website. Of course, you can find Wild Planet Trust, Paignton Zoo and Newquay Zoo on all main social media platforms, and we'd really appreciate you checking those out as well. All that's left to say is thank you very much for watching, and of course we'll see you in the next episode.